Before I read the story, I know it's going to get a little heavy. So, what was the name of that guy from The Worst Person You Know? Can we just boo this man? Boo! Good, because he sucks. I know a man like him, and I still think about him angrily. The Boy in the Treehouse by Allison Johnston. I lived in Arizona until I was 8. I love the desert. Its wild inhabitants and vast expanses filled me with something my child brain could not fully comprehend. But 30 years later, I think back to those sun-soaked days inventing adventures along the arroyo. And I feel a sense of danger and promise of my childhood swell inside me. I was raised in the Presbyterian church. And although our household was by no means an especially religious one, Sunday morning service was a regular family activity. I was a shy, creative kid. I liked animals, reading and drawing. Although I was introspective, I never found it especially difficult making friends. Maybe it was the result of being the youngest child, but I felt a sense of purpose in plugging myself into the needs of others, quietly shifting to accommodate the plans of those around me. Some might call this people-pleasing. I think it's an act of survival. When I was 6, my mother befriended the mother of one of the boys in my Sunday school class. I think his name was Jason. He was a pretty typical boy, more confident than he had any business being, and somewhat in contrast to my sensitive nature. But as is the easy way of children still forming their personalities, we didn't require many overlapping interests to find a friendship of sorts. We weren't the best of friends, but sometimes we would run around and entertain ourselves while our mothers chatted after church. One of my favorite activities was a game we called Cheetah, in which we prowl around the church grounds growling at parishioners. I mostly prowled while hiding in bushes. He mostly prowled while frightening the older ladies. Our relationship didn't progress much beyond this occasional play acting. As easygoing as I was, I found him rough and at times a little mean. One day, my mother had a scheduling conflict and asked Jason's mom if she could watch me after Sunday school. Jason's mom graciously agreed, and I rode with them in their dark blue van. Jason's father was an Army vet who had lost the use of his legs. I didn't know much about the details, but I was both fascinated and frightened by this fact. I remember staring at his pinstripe suit pants from the shadowed safety of my mother's skirt. How could a person not stand or walk, but still have legs? What do they look like under there? Do they hurt? Jason's dad might have been confined to a wheelchair, but something about his imposing presence evoked authority. Even in the 100 degrees heat of a Tucson summer, he would wear a suit to church, and shoes were shined so thoroughly that the sun glinted off of them from the asphalt parking lot. As we turned onto a gravel driveway, arriving at the large adobe house, Jason and his younger sister, Jenny, piled out and raced across the gravel toward the front door. Their shoes made percussive crunching sounds against the small stones as they ran. I followed behind, Jason reaching to the front door and pushing his sister out of the way to be the first one inside. Jenny yelped, trying to catch up to her brother. We enter the house, a carnivorous retrieve from the warmth, a cavernous retrieve. We enter the house, a cavernous reprieve from the warmth of the day, to find Jason's dad watching sports in the living room. If there's a reason to skip Sunday morning service, it's to worship the religion of American football. Were you kids well behaved? His father asked. Yes, sir. Jason and Jenny both responded in unison. Jason's mother momentarily placed a hand on her husband's shoulder before leading us into the kitchen. She opened a few cupboards and stared into the fridge, then suggested that Jason show me their new treehouse while she fixed us a snack. Jason brightened at the idea. Jenny, desperate to be included, asked if she could play too. Jenny said no with a subtle glare at his sister's direction. A heavy sigh came from the living room. Jason, let your sister play. Jason groaned and rolled his eyes before uncrossing his arms to accept defeat. We headed outside into the baking sun, sliding the glass dining room door behind us. The treehouse was situated at the back edge of a fenced yard, overlooking a dry landscape of desert brush. Hammered into the trunk of a large Afghan pine was a row of wooden planks, indicating the vertical route which we would climb to get inside. I hesitated. Jason kicked a stray soccer ball aggressively against the back fence, then, annoyed by reluctance, asked, "What are you doing?" "I just climb up?" I asked. "Duh. You've never been in a treehouse?" I shook my head. "I don't think so." Jason watched me for a moment, squinting against the blinding light before pushing past me to scamper up the planks, swiftly followed by Jenny, a small blonde-haired shadow. Carefully, I climbed, reaching one hand up, followed by the opposite foot, hand, then foot, until I reached the opening of the fortress. I crawled inside, scared to be so high off the ground, but relieved to be shaded from the sun, and always willing to accommodate. Sports equipment, action figures, and children's books were scattered across the floor, and a collection of plastic crates storing more toys sat in the corner. A few drawings were done in marker and had been tacked up on one wall, and I stepped closer to inspect them. "Did you draw these?" I asked Jason. "I did," Jenny replied shyly. I told her they were good. "I like that drawing too." Jenny smiled, a small look of pride washing over her face, before Jason announced that we were being boring. He leaned over one of the crates to scoop up a couple of golf balls in one hand and stood there looking in my direction. A silent moment passed between us before he pointed to a spot on the floor against the back wall, instructing me to sit there. I hesitated again, asking why. He told me it was a part of a game we were about to play. "So I'm in charge, and you're my prisoner. Here, Jenny, you can be a prison guard." He handed her a golf ball while I obediently sat down against the wall before asking if I could see one. He reluctantly extended his hand out, adding, "Fine, but you can't have it. You can just touch it." My fingers reached forward, feeling the golf ball's cool, dimpled surface in the heat of his hand. I tapped the top of it with my fingernail, noticing its hard exterior. "Jenny, since you're the guard, you have to stand watch." He looked back at me for a moment, then turned to Jenny, saying, "If she doesn't do what I tell her, or if she tries to run away, throw a golf ball at her." I pulled my hand away as if from a hot stove, watching Jason step back toward his sister. His eyes fixed on me, he continued staring with a strange expression, mulling something over as he reached for another ball. Was it apathy? Anger? Curiosity? I couldn't tell. Jenny shifted from one foot to the other. "I don't want to play this game," she said quietly. Jason turned his head toward her. "You throw a golf ball at her if she tries to run away. If you don't, I'll throw a ball at you and I'll aim for your head." He met my gaze before instructing me to take off my shirt. I sat there, motionless, a tightness winding itself in the pit of my soft stomach. He let out an exasperated sigh before saying, "Take off your shirt. Jenny, the prisoner is not following orders. Hit her with a ball." I wrapped my arms around my head, tucking my knees up to my chin reflexively, but Jenny just stood there. Jason lunged forward, grabbing the hem of my t-shirt. My arms alternated between flailing, pushing them away, wrapping themselves around my body as he yanked and pulled my shirt up towards my shoulders. "Throw a ball," he commanded, and gently, reluctantly threw a ball in my direction, missing my head by a good 3 feet. I continued to flail as he stretched out the fabric of my shirt, and the tug of war persisted before he suddenly let out a laugh and let go. "This is what your arms look like," he said, then waved his arms in the air, adding, "like a jellyfish." I continued hugging my body while his smile slowly faded into displeasure. As he handed his sister another golf ball, we heard the sliding glass door to the house open and Jason's mom's calling us inside for snack time. Jason threw the ball into the crate and clambered down the ladder without a word. Jenny followed a few feet behind. Then I did too, smoothing out my shirt before tentatively climbing downward. We went inside to drink lemonade and eat goldfish crackers. But I wasn't very hungry. When my mom picked me up, I was quiet. She asked if I had fun, and I shrugged in response, buckling my seatbelt and turning my head to stare out the window. Jason's mom said she made lemonade? You got to see his treehouse? I nodded. I never told my mom about what happened in the treehouse, and I never went to Jason's house again. Sometimes I would see him at church, but avoided him, staying glued to my mother's side. A few months later, my dad got a new job, and our family moved to Western New York. On a return visit a year later, we stopped by the church to see old friends. My mom suggested we drop by my former Sunday school class, and immediately I began to panic. We entered the room, my heart racing to find a handful of kids making crafts. As my mom caught up with the teacher, I sat down at one of the tables. There he was, Jason, sitting across the room from me. He had grown a couple of inches since the last time I saw him, looked heavier in the face, and now sported the same military-style haircut as his dad. But it was unmistakably him. He glanced up at me for a brief moment with no indication of recognition. Then turned back to a piece of construction paper he was cutting with scissors. He didn't remember me. Not at all. Thank you.
Calling y'all fucking nerds after this feels weird. But I'm still gonna do it, you fucking nerds. Okay. So, our final story tonight, and the spookiest story of all. It's got the spookiest title. I know how to pronounce the names of both of these people, so we don't have to worry about that. And then after this, y'all can go home, or alternatively, head on over to Big Top Lounge for the Horny Tonk Society for some good old country music. They play some great tunes. I know I don't look like it, but I am a big country music person, and they play some wonderful Hank Aaron covers that I'm super about. But our final story tonight is called Ghost Boyfriend Who's Spooky. Written by Brenda Valdivia and read by Katie Manning.